Hey, welcome to Church Experience Online. We're so happy that you joined us today. As you watch this teaching video, if you have any questions or need help getting connected, please don't hesitate to reach out by phone or email. Also, our website is the best place to go if you'd like to access helpful growth step resources, join a serving team, connect in a life group, get your questions answered, or support this movement financially by giving online. At the end of this teaching video, you'll hear one of our Church Experience Worship original songs. We hope this gives you an opportunity to worship and reflect on what you learned. Thanks again for joining us at Church Experience Online.
It's great to see you guys today. You know, I don't know what you've thought about the weather lately, but I've been really happy that it's actually been a little stormy and we've been getting some rain because it's been dry for a long time. You see a lot of the ponds around here have been like low, and a lot of the areas that are normally green have been brown, and so things are starting to come back to life, thankfully. I'm really happy, though, because I love a green grass yard. I mean, I love to see that bright green grass, and my yard has not been green lately. With the lack of rain that we had this spring, I mean, my yard has started to get to brown and then like dirt. It's kind of where it's been going. The trajectory has been pretty bad. And you know, when we got our house, like one of the things on our future list is to get it irrigated and sprinkler and have the sprinklers and all that. But right now it doesn't, so I'm out there with my hose and I'm spraying it, trying to keep it green. But it's just, I haven't been able to keep up. It just got worse and worse and worse. And my boys will say, "Dad, let's go play baseball in the yard." So we'll go out and we have this little like field in our front yard. And it's like a very small field, but it's our little baseball field. And we have this little squishy ball so it won't break neighbors' windows and cars that are going by. And we'll stand out there, and they'll just love it when I'll pitch to them, and they'll hit. Like baseball it's not like a two-way thing for them right now. It's like I pitch and I play outfield, and I get the ball, and they hit. That's basically what it is. But it's so fun for me. The part I like is as I'll pitch, they'll hit, I'll run and grab the ball, but then the game is, since there's no other outfielders for me to throw it to, I just get to whip the ball at them. It's like so much fun. You're saying, "Brandon, that's messed up. Pray for me," but it's so fun. And so I'll just whip this little ball at the kids, and they're running around, and it's great. We have a great time, but you can see now where like home base is because it's dirt, and the little girls will come over and they'll dig in it. You know, I'm like, "Guys, don't dig in the yard," and they're like, "It's not a yard, Dad, it's dirt." I'm like, "Good point. It's not a yard anymore." So I'm really happy for the rain. But you know what? The neighbors on both sides of me have irrigation, and so they have sprinklers in their yard, and the guy across the street has it. And so, like, all around me, there's this green grass, and mine's not, like, where I want it to be yet. And I'll tell you what, as you're going through it in life, one of the worst things you can do is look at others that are in a different spot than you, right? And you can do this comparison thing. Like, "Oh, man, I feel so bad about where I'm at," because look where they are. Now, one of my neighbors, he does an amazing job keeping his yard immaculate. And I do that with, like, my garden and my flowers and all that, but my yard is not looking that way. And I feel bad because I know he's like, "Man, why does this guy, like, live next to me?" That's probably what he thinks because when he looks at my yard. And I'm thinking, like, "Oh, man, I love this neighbor, and I love how nice he has it, but why do I have to, like, have the comparison, you know, like, right across the street?" Because I know he walks out the door and he has to be like, "Man, you know what I would do with that yard?" You know, I'm sure that's what's going on. But you know what? When you're going through it, you can, thanks to our social media age, whatever it is that you're going through, you can find somebody else that's already gone through it and is in a better place than you. Right? If you're single and you want to be married, you can find someone out there that looks like, you know, they got it all together and they got the perfect relationship, and you can sit at home all depressed because you don't got what they have. Right? And maybe you're trying to dig your way out of some student loans or some college debt or, you know, a car payment. And then you know, you're comparing yourself to somebody else who seems like they have it all, and you're like, "Oh, man, I'm never going to get there, or maybe you're striving for a promotion at work, or you want to make a bigger difference, and you want to get to a certain place, and you got this like entry-level thing going on, and you're like, well, man, look what they got. Look where they're at. I'm never going to get there, right? Or maybe you're just starting out in school and someone else is just finishing and they're walking the stage this spring, graduation, and you're thinking, man, that's never going to be me. Or you're thinking about where you want to be in your marriage, and you feel like you just had a Friday night fight, and then you look at this other couple and maybe they're sitting across from your church and you're like, man, they look like they got the perfect relationship, right? Trying to change some things in your life, and you feel stuck, and you see someone else that looks like they're all freed up and they're running down life's racetrack, and you're thinking, God, why is it that I can't be where they are? Why can't I? And I'm just telling you, comparison, when you compare your situation to others, it'll discourage you. It'll tear you up. Now, you can use it for motivation, but if you look at other people and you look at other situations as you're going through it, and you think, well, man, why is my situation not like that situation? It's going to discourage you. It's going to hold you back as you get through it. So I want to challenge you to not look at other names today as you're going to it. I'm going to challenge you to look at one name, the name of Jesus. Our standard, our inspiration, the one who we're striving toward, to let him be your focus as you're going through it. I don't know what you're going through, but I'm sure you're going through something. And as we've been saying in this series, if you're not going through something now, just hold on. You will be. Because we all go through it in life. And whatever it is that you're going through, I think there's a lot for us to learn from this guy in the Bible named Jonah. Jonah, we've been looking at his life the last couple of weeks. We're going to wrap it up with the series today. Jonah was someone who God called. He had a calling on his life to go through it. There's something God wanted him to do, but he didn't want to go through it. He didn't want to do it. He just said, God, I'm out. I'm gonna go somewhere else because I don't want to go through it. And we talked about how Jonah took the path of least resistance. He ran from God, experienced some pain. God supernaturally redirected his path, and he's going to give him a second chance. And I love that God is a God of second chances, because no matter where you feel stuck in your life at right now, maybe you feel held back because of your past, because of your sin, and maybe one of the things that you're comparing to others is like, man, why couldn't I have like this kind of start that I saw someone else have? Or why can't I be where someone else is? Because you look at your life and maybe your sin or the things you wish you could go back and do over, those periods of your life you wish you could redo. Well, Jonah, this is encouragement for you. Jonah had that. He had a past. He ran from God. He experienced the consequences. He fell down, but he got back up, and God gave him a second chance. And I want to share that story with you today in Jonah chapter 3. I think there's a lot we can learn beginning in verse 1. Then the word of the Lord came to Jonah a second time. Go to the great city of Nineveh and proclaim to it the message I give you. God calls Nineveh a great city. I think that's interesting. It was a great city on the outside, but God actually calls it a great city. Verse 3, Jonah obeyed. This time he got it right. He obeyed the word of the Lord, and he went to Nineveh. Now, Nineveh was a large city. It took 3 days to go through it. Everybody say through it. It took 3 days to go through it. Jonah began by going a day's journey into the city, proclaiming, 40 more days, and Nineveh will be overthrown. Now, what a message to be given by God to deliver to these people. In 40 days, your city is done. In 40 days, God's going to destroy you guys. I mean, it's over. I mean, what kind of a message is that? And he's walking through the city, giving everybody this message. 40 days, this city will be destroyed because of the sin that's here. You know, this city called Nineveh was referred to by God as a great city. The walls around the city were 50 feet wide, 100 feet high. Massive city. 8 miles in circumference. They had an outer wall, not just this powerful inner wall, but they had an outer wall that went around surrounding areas. They had towns and villages and outlying areas and fields that were a part of this city. It says in Jonah chapter 4 that about 120,000 people lived in this city. And in that era, in that time, and that's a powerful and large city. It would still be considered a large city. I mean, 120,000 people, this large city, and economic power. And God refers to it as a great city. But what we know from reading elsewhere in the Word is that Nineveh was a very wicked city. So inside the walls of this great city was a very corrupt city. A city filled with violence, a city filled with destruction, anger, all kinds of problems and issues and people hurting each other, killing each other. I mean, it was a very violent and sin-filled city. Prostitution, all kinds of stuff that it mentions in the Bible that was happening in this city. Idolatry, they turned from God to worship other things. This city, although it looked great on the outside, on the inside it was corrupt. You know, it's very possible that, you know, for us, we could start to chase a lifestyle that on the outside seems great. You look at other people and you're thinking, man, I'd love to live that kind of a life. Or, man, I'd love to be in that kind of a situation. Or, man, I'd love to change this and have this. And as you're going through whatever God's called you to go through, you can look at other situations in life and think, man, I'm sure it would be great. Sure would be a great life if I had that life. And what you might not realize is that the greatness you see as you look in other areas of life and as you compare yourself, and you don't have to just be in a bad place to compare yourself. You can be in a really great place, but there's always someone that seems like they're in a greater place in life, right? Is what you may not realize is that on the inside, things are not so great. You're trying to get somewhere financially, and you're maybe trying to provide for your family. And you're thinking, well, man, if I could just be where they're at. And so you see, well, they have a certain kind of lifestyle. I'm going to overextend myself a little bit just so I can kind of keep up with everybody else or my friends. And what you might not realize is that person down the way, they might be drowning in debt. They might be stressed out and overextended, and it looks good on the outside because they just got the newest, latest thing. And what you don't realize is that for you to aspire to something great could actually ruin you because you're trying to be something that God has not planned for you in this time. You might rush into a relationship that's not the right relationship because you want to have the relationship that somebody else has, and it's not the time for you. And you're going through it, and you might shortcut God's plan for you, and you might jump out and step out on your own outside of God's plan because you're trying to get somewhere that God doesn't want you to be right now. And, you know, this city looked like a great city. And on the outside, it was a very great city. It was a large city, but there was things about this city that were unhealthy. And if you're not careful, it's very easy to forget what you actually need in life. It's real easy to forget what you actually want in life. And there's one thing that you need that you might not realize you need. You might have forgotten that you need it. But there's one thing that you actually need. And I put it in your notes. It's a very simple lesson. It's going to be the foundation that we're going to build on today, but it's the most important thing, and it's that Jesus is what you need. I need Jesus. And if you don't know you need Jesus yet, here's the danger for you. I'm going to talk to those of you in the room now that may not feel like you need Jesus yet. You haven't found out that you need him yet. You've never discovered Jesus. For those of you in the room in that situation, the danger for you is that you will chase a great life, but you will miss the most important ingredient. I made a smoothie the other day, and I didn't put the sugar in with it, and I put a little bit of sugar to kind of sweeten it up, and I made this smoothie, but I'm used to drinking it with like a little bit of sugar, so it has that little extra, and I actually, at one point, this was like months back, I was in a hurry. I grabbed the smoothie, and I poured in what I thought was the sugar. I blended it up. I took a drink out of it, and it just tasted, oh, man, that didn't taste right. You know what I did, right? What'd I do? I put the salt in, right? And I was like, okay, this is ruined. This does not taste good. And you could miss the one ingredient that could make it great, but it will never be great if you don't have Jesus in it, in your life. And so if you don't have Jesus, if you don't realize you need Jesus, you run the risk of chasing something great but never attaining it. However, what I found is probably the greater danger in this room, and I'm always aware that there's some in the room who are not yet following Jesus, and we're so glad to have you. But if I could just talk to those of you in the room, maybe the majority of you that are following Jesus, and maybe you're like me, you've been following him for some time. I grew up in a home where my parents taught me about Jesus at a young age, so I've been a part of a church for my whole life. And I'll just tell you this. The danger for you is that you will forget that you need Jesus. See, there's probably a point in your life where you realized you needed him and you were really passionate about it and you chased Jesus and you brought Jesus in your life and he changed your life and things got better because God's blessing. If you look at human history and you look about where the movement of Jesus has gone, and you'll see like civilizations, they'll rise and they'll be blessed because our country is a great example of this because of what God did, and because people started living for him and seeking him. Not everyone, but the majority were following him, and God's blessing was on those people. But then what you'll see is, if you study human history, is there's a tendency that people start to worship the blessings that God gives. And then you'll see the eventual corruption and downfall of those societies because they'll forget what actually was the foundation, which was the reason for that very blessing. And if you're not careful, what you'll have is you'll have Jesus in your life because you need him, but then you'll come to a place where you don't just need him anymore. Now you just like him. Like, I like Jesus in my life. Kind of like you like your favorite chair, right? Or you like a hobby, right? Or you like that certain meal that's like your favorite meal. Like, I like those things. I don't like need them, but I really like them. And you could very easily be sitting here today without realizing it, having been following Jesus for a long time, and say, well, I really love this great life that I'm pursuing or chasing, or this dream I'm chasing, this whatever it is in my life, and I also really like Jesus. And maybe you wouldn't say it like that. You might even sing the words that might fall out of your mouth during a worship song is, I love you, Jesus, and you might even say, I'm fully surrendered, when you're not surrendered. And if that's where you're at, it's very dangerous, because if you forget that you need Jesus, you'll start to put your hope in other things instead of in Jesus. And you'll want the blessing of God without following the path of God. And that will lead you off course, and you'll never get to the great life that you want. See, Nineveh was a great city, but it was filled with sin, and it was about to end in destruction. Isn't that interesting that God called it a great city, but then he was about to destroy it? You can have a great thing going on, but it can end in disappointment and disillusionment and even destruction if Jesus is not the center of it. So what are you living for today? Who are you living for? Are you living for yourself, or are you living for Jesus? Or do you realize what you just wrote down? I need Jesus. I hope you look at that. I hope you think about that this week. I hope you pray about that. Jesus, I'm in a place where I realize I need you, because you can drift so easily, but you can't forget that you need him. You need Jesus. Not just you like Jesus, you need Jesus. We need Jesus. I need Jesus in my life. Because a great lifestyle without our great God is nothing great at all. It's empty inside. But the name of Jesus, it means so much to us. And names do. They mean a lot. Names, we associate things with names. In fact, FedEx had this great commercial that they put out. Someone found this, and I thought it was so great. I wanted to share it with you. They had this expedited shipping that's called ground shipping, which ground shipping does not sound fast, and so they're trying to reconcile the difference between what people's perception of that name is and what they're actually delivering. So they made a commercial about the association of names. Thought it was great. Check it out.
FedEx saved us with their overnight service, so we've added FedEx Ground for everyday shipping.
Ground? That doesn't sound fast.
Actually, Joel, FedEx Ground is faster than you think.
You can't judge things by their name. Don't you agree, Harry?
Absolutely.
Eileen?
Of course.
Joy? Bob?
You see, Joel, we all agree that FedEx Ground is fast, despite the name Ground.
Well said, Mr. Turkeyneck.
FedEx Ground. Fast, reliable, and for less than you think.
We do this all the time without even thinking about it. We associate names with meaning, and not just names of things or people, but just, it might be a brand, it might be an image. Growing up, my younger brother, he would be in this group that they would do like flips over cars. They had these inline skates, and they'd do tricks, and they'd shows, they made videos, they had this whole thing going, and I'd go watch them, and I couldn't do a flip over a car, but I loved watching them do it, and that was kind of like their image, their thing. And then my other brother, he got into, having like the country western theme going on, and even though he grew up in the city, like he got into the country western theme, and it was awesome. He had a truck, and he had his friends, and they'd go out, and they go mudding, and he got a whole gun collection now. I mean, that's his thing, and that was like his like image. And then, I kind of got into the whole basketball thing. I grew up playing basketball and then surfing and the coastal kind of deal. And so I was going through high school. That was kind of like and maybe you can remember like when you're going through those early years of life, maybe you're in it, some of you, and you think about image. Like who you are, what you associate with, what your friends are into. And likely you got around a certain peer group that they all played this sport, or they all were into this kind of art, or they were into this kind of game, or doing this certain thing. And as you're going through those years, you're finding who you are, who you associate with, what names you identify with. And I don't think that leaves us as we get older. I just think it changes, and it looks a little different. But we associate names and images, and it might be the brands that you wear, or the kind of vehicle that you drive, or the places that you go, or the establishments that you eat at, or the places that you vacation. See, it can be a lot of different things, but there's these names that we associate with, an image with, we attach to, and we connect with, some more than others. And you have names that you would identify in your life as this is me. This is who I am. And if someone said, describe to you who you are, you would think of some things. When I sat down with a character artist at a wedding that I officiated earlier this year, I sat down and he said, tell me who you are, because he was going to draw that. It was at the reception. It was something creative that they had going on, and anyone could come sit down, and they would draw your picture, but you had to tell him who you were so he knew what to draw in the picture. And it took me a moment, because I had to think about, okay, what I want him to draw. Who am I? And you have to think about that. Who do you associate with? Who are you? What is it that identifies you most? And I'll tell you, the answer is, if you're a follower of Jesus, the thing that should be the first thing on our lips is Jesus. That's the name above all names in our life. And there's no other name that should be greater than that. And what can happen is that as a follower of Jesus, you can get familiar with Jesus, and he's a part of your life like a shirt that you wear, but you're really putting on that shirt so you can go to work and chase after another name called success, or called blessing, or called wealth, or called relationship. You want to be in that relationship, or whatever it is, and you can chase things in life without realizing that what you're really after, what you really need, is found in something that you already have, and that's Jesus. And you need him, and you can't forget that. But once you realize that you have what you really need, it sets you free to live. Because if you already have what you need the most, you don't have to chase anymore. You just chase him. And you chase God, and God fills up everything else. And you wake up and you go work hard after whatever God's called you to do, and you chase the calling. Jonah had a calling. It was to go to Nineveh. It was a very hard calling. The thing he had to go through was not easy. It's not always going to be easy for you. But once you realize you have what you need, you don't have to go get it somewhere else. What you're going to is already in you. It's in Jesus. I need Jesus. It's so important that you know that. Jonah chapter 3, though, there's some more lessons for us. And down in verse 5, it says the Ninevites, these Ninevites that Jonah was going around, these wicked Ninevites that could have so easily put an end to Jonah's life as he's walking through these streets. These Ninevites, as they hear about this message that their city is going to be destroyed, that God's not happy, it's really unreal what you read here. The Ninevites, they believed God. They believed him. They could have so easily ignored Jonah. They so could have easily rejected him. But they didn't do any of that. They believed God. This is amazing. They believed God. They actually believed that this was going to happen, that their city would be destroyed. And it says a fast was proclaimed, and all of them from the greatest to the least put on sackcloth. So they're fasting. When Jonah's warning reached the king of Nineveh, he rose from his throne. He took off his royal robes, covered himself with sackcloth, and he sat down in the dust. This is the proclamation he issued in Nineveh. By decree of the king and his nobles, do not let people or animals, herds or flocks, taste anything. Do not let them eat or drink. A mandated fast, even for the animals. Don't even feed your animals. This is like intense fast, intense deal. Verse 8, but let people and animals be covered with sackcloth. Let everyone call urgently on God. Call urgently on God. Let them give up their evil ways and their violence. Who knows? God may yet relent with compassion, turn from his fierce anger, so that we will not perish. When God saw that what they did and how they turned from their evil ways, he relented and did not bring on them the destruction that he had threatened. So Jonah tells them that God's going to destroy the city. They believe God, and they, from the greatest to the least in the kingdom, they humble themselves before God. They pray, and they ask for God's compassion on them. This is truly a miracle. This might be the biggest miracle in the book of Jonah. These 4 chapters that we've been going through. I mean, we think about Jonah and the whale, and but the greatest miracle might be the fact that this city repented from their sin. And they did so with passion. Why would they? One Bible commentator I thought was very interesting said that, in studying history in this area, 2 plagues had actually erupted there. One in 765 BC, the other in 759 BC, the same year that Jonah arrived at the city with this message from God. Also, they know that a total eclipse of the sun happened in the year 763 BC. These would have been considered signs of divine anger, and they might explain to some extent why the Ninevites were so quick to repent, to turn from their sin. This total eclipse of the sun had happened just a few years before. They'd had a series of plagues. People had been dying, and you see piles of dead bodies. It wakes you up, something's going on, and they took that as a divine, even though they weren't following the same God of Jonah, even though they were living in sin. This messenger from God comes and walks the street and says, your city is about to be destroyed, and you've already seen the destruction, and they thought that there's some divine connection with an angry deity involved in their situation with all the plagues, the sun, and so they took Jonah's message seriously. Do you know that God is working behind the scenes to set the table for what it is that he's taking you to, what he's wanting to do in your life? And you know what I think we do? I think we wait for God when he's actually waiting for us to take a step. See, he's working. He's setting things up, and he's just waiting on you. And we think, well, God, I don't know how that's going to work out. And if I do this, if I start trusting you more in this area, if I follow you, then what? And if then, we have all these if-then scenarios. If I follow you, if I surrender, God, if I live for you, then, and God's like, you just got to trust me to take care of my part, but you need to do your part. And Jonah, if he would have looked at this city, he would have said, there's no way. This city, if you would have stood on the edge of Nineveh, if you could have stood on their wall and watched a day in the city of Nineveh, you would have said, this town will never be a God-honoring city. And someone to walk through this town and give a message about God, they'll surely kill him. But God had been working behind the scenes. The plagues, all these different things have happened. God was setting the table so that they would know that God meant business. And that God was not going to tolerate their sin anymore. And that there would be judgment. Thankfully, God's patient with you and I. When we fall short, he doesn't give us the full weight of the punishment we deserve when we rebel against him and we pridefully, self-centeredly push our own deal ahead and push God out. God doesn't give us what we deserve for our sin in the moment. But there will be a time. There will be a time of reckoning. And the Bible's very clear about that we'll stand before God and we'll give an account and we'll be held accountable. And there's no amount of good that we can do for the rest of our lives that makes up for all the sin in the first part of our lives. So you can't, I'm going to make up for, man, I wish I would have had this area of my life to do over again, but since I can't, I'm just going to be really good the rest of my life. It doesn't work like that. And we'll be accountable. But the amazing thing about Jesus is when he came, he died for you and for your sins so that when you receive him into your life, it's like this covering over your life. Is this righteous life that you have not always lived. The Bible's real clear. We've all sinned and fallen short. So it's just like this covering, this righteous covering of Jesus. He was the only person to ever live without sin, and that covers us. And so when we invite him into our life and we stand before God, we're covered. And so God looks at us and we stand before him, and he's like, all right, you're good. I see Jesus in this one. I see Jesus. This one follows this. I see the name of Jesus in this one. And so it's Jesus is our hope. He's the name we live for. He's what we're going to. And as you go through it, you need to make certain you're real clear about what it is that you're chasing, what it is that you're living for. And God is working in your life. He's doing things that you may not realize. And maybe if you're stuck going through it and you're not where you want to be yet, and there's some part of your character, your life, you want to change, or something that you need to move in your life, I would encourage you to take a lesson from the Ninevites and their sin. They were deep in it, and you may feel stuck deep in something in your life. It might be a hidden addiction. It might be some kind of sin in your life a pattern that's been a long-term thing. You're just trying to change. You're trying to get past it, move through it. It might be a relationship that just needed some attention for a long time that you have not been able to fix and repair. I want to tell you, whatever it is in your life that needs to be changed, look at what they did. Look at how God worked in their situation. They were extreme about it. They said, we're going to chase this. We're not going to eat until we make this right. We're going to call out on God. We're going to fix this now. And sometimes what you need is a radical change. You need to rip the Band-Aid off and realize that God, all right, enough playing around. I've been doing this a long time, and I've been playing this game with you. I've been doing this dance, but it's time to get serious. And maybe that's where you're at today. Maybe you need to take a lesson from the Ninevites, and maybe you need to make a change. 1 John chapter 4, verse 4. 1 John chapter 4, verse 4 gives us a word that I hope will be a huge encouragement for all of us. It says, you, dear children, are from God and have overcome them, but the one who is in you is greater than the one who is in the world, is greater. So whatever it is that you're up against, and I want you to just think about what that is right now, whatever it is that you're up against, whatever that is, God in you is greater than the obstacle. Whatever it is that you're trying to go through, whatever that you're hung up by, whatever is stopping you, holding you back, whatever is in the gap between you and getting to where God wants to take you, whatever it is in your own life that's holding you back, God in you is greater than that. So trust in God and let God be the power that propels you in your life through it. Here's the lesson in your notes. Never underestimate the pull of sin or the greater power of God. Never underestimate the pull of sin and how powerful it is. Stop flirting with it. It's going to mess you up. It's going to pull you in. You're standing in that riptide. It's going to pull you out to sea. That current is strong. Don't put your foot in it. Never underestimate the power of sin, but never underestimate the greater power of God. So whatever it is that you're going against, the Bible tells us that there's no temptation that sees you other than what is common to man. And God is faithful. When you're tempted, he will provide a way out so that you don't have to sin. So stop saying, well, I just had to. I was in the moment, and then the thing happened, and I can't control it. You can control it. You can get to a place where you have a pattern of sin, and you have a pattern that is hard to break, and you need to break free of that. And you're like, maybe it's a substance abuse, and you just cannot overcome it. You might need to get help. We talked last week about how you need to talk first to God about it, then you need to talk to somebody else about it. You need to make a plan, get some accountability for that plan, and then take a step on the plan. And if you missed that message, you can go back and listen to that. But, the thing you need to know now is that whatever it is that you're up against as you're going through it, God's power is greater. So don't underestimate God's power. But you need to take a step. You need to take a step. There was actually an NFL player. Earlier you heard from some NFL players here in the service, and that was fun. But, you may be familiar with an NFL player that grew up around here in Florida. His name is Primetime Deion Sanders, old school. He grew up in Fort Myers, Florida. And he was known, if you're familiar with Deion Sanders, he was known to be the guy who in the same week hit a major league home run and scored an NFL touchdown all in the same week. And he was very talented. He was a defensive cornerback in the NFL. And he was an outfielder and obviously could hit well in the major leagues. And Deion, Primetime Sanders from Fort Myers, Florida, said he grew up with a crowd there here in Florida. He grew up with a crowd of people he called idols. Idols. And this was his quote. He said, if these people were, if I'd have practiced a little harder, I'd be a superstar. If I'd have worked a little bit more, I would have made it. They were as fast as me when we were kids, but instead of working for their dreams, they chose drugs and a life of street corners. We don't need any more idols. You might be procrastinating your potential right now because you're not taking a step that you know you need to take. That step through it, that you're waiting for the circumstances to be just right. You're waiting for that moment for everything to, and then it's going to be perfect, and then you're going to take a step. See, it was never going to be perfect in Nineveh for Jonah to go there. It was not going to be the perfect scenario. But Jonah had to take a step, and he had to follow and trust God's plan. And for you to get through whatever you're going through, you have to take a step. And if you want to get to it, you got to go through it. You got to take a step. So what is your step? What is it you've been procrastinating? What is it you've been putting off that you know God wants to do in your life? What is that? What step do you need to take? Jonah chapter 4, verse 1. But to Jonah, this seemed very wrong. People turning to God, they're turning from their sin. He became very angry. You would think that it would be the opposite. Here's a man of God seeing a city turn to God. You would think he'd be very happy with this. He's angry. We're going to get at his real motive here in chapter 4, why he ran from God in the first place. Verse 2, it says, he prayed to the Lord, "Isn't this what I said, Lord, when I was still at home? That is why I tried to forestall by fleeing to Tarshish. I knew that you are a gracious and compassionate God, slow to anger and abounding in love, a God who relents from sending calamity. Now, Lord, take away my life, for it is better for me to die than to live." But the Lord replied, "Is it right for you to be angry?" Jonah, why are you so angry? Well, because, God, I knew that you would forgive them, and they don't deserve that. You know all their sin, God. You know all the violence. They don't deserve that. And the truth is, we don't deserve God's forgiveness. He chose to forgive us and send his son Jesus because he loves you, but we don't deserve it. But it might have been a little deeper for Jonah. We mentioned this last week a little bit, but one of the reasons Jonah, maybe the reason that he ran and didn't want to go to Nineveh, as one Bible commentator put it, is that He may have been familiar with Amos and Hosea and the prophecies that Assyria would be Israel's destroyer. And these prophecies may be the reason why Jonah didn't want to be a part of helping this evil nation turn to God and then be used by God to punish his own people. I don't want to have any part in that, God. If this is going to hurt my own people, this is going to hurt me. So it was a selfish motive. If this is going to hurt me and my people, then God, I don't want to be a part of that. Even though, God, this is what you want, if it's going to cost me, does this start to sound familiar a little bit? God, this is going to cost me. I'm going to have to sacrifice. So to follow you, God, and to live for you means that I'm going to have to sometimes put what I want aside so that, God, you can accomplish what you want. And so we back away from it, and we shy away from what God really wants to do in our life. See, the question that I think we need to ask is, do I need an attitude adjustment? And that's the question there in your notes. Maybe you want to write it down. Do I need an attitude adjustment? See, I can't walk into your life and ask that. I mean, I can. But if someone walks into your life and they say, hey, do you need an attitude check? You kind of get defensive, right? So you got to ask that question of yourself. Do you? I'm just asking, do you need an attitude adjustment? Is your heart in the right place? Is your motives in the right place? What are you living for? What are you living for? Now, it's possible that you don't have some sin in your own life that as you're getting through it that you need to overcome. Maybe you're freed up following Jesus with all your heart. You're not perfect, but man, you're saying, God, I'm so grateful that you've got me out of so much. You've got me through so much, and I'm in a good place. I'm still moving through it, but man, I'm not held back by that, and that's a great spot to be in. But maybe for you, it's being aware of the sin of those around you, that there's people around you that are perishing, like those people in Nineveh. See, God's heart was breaking for those people, and Jonah's wasn't. Jonah was worried about himself. You know, we can get passionate about so many things these days that are not worthy of our life. You know, there's a headline maybe you saw recently. Did you hear this headline? This is in the last week or two. Texas man sues date. Did you see this story? It's really interesting. This guy's name is, I like his first name, Brandon is his name, Brandon Besmar. He's 37 years old. He's going out on a date with this girl. First date, I believe. They're going out to the theater. He buys her ticket. She drove there, all right? So he bought the ticket. They're sitting in the movie theater. In the first 10 minutes of the movie, she's sitting there and she texts 15 to 20 times, he said. In the first 10 minutes. So he's trying to watch a movie. He's watching a 3D version of Guardians of the Galaxy. She's texting 15 times. He leans over to her in the movie, and he says, hey, could you please put that away and not text her in the movie? They're the first date. And so they're obviously not having a good connection. And she gets up and she walks out, and she gets in her car that she drove him there in, and she leaves the theater, leaves him at the movie. I'm assuming he finished the movie and watched the rest of the movie. Later, a few days later, he's thinking about it. He's upset about it. True story, he texts her, and he asks for the price of the movie tickets. He asked her to give him the $17.32 that he paid back. He's like, I spent this much money. You left, and you left me there. I want the money back. She says, no, that ain't going to happen. She's like, you were rude to me. It's not going to happen. So true story, he sues her for $17.32. This is the headline this last week or two. Man sues date for $17.32. They contacted her. Are you aware of this lawsuit? No, I didn't even know this is happening, but I'm not paying this guy. This is crazy. But he's all fired up and passionate about something that is really not that big of a deal. And we can laugh about that, and that's pretty ridiculous and extreme, but how many times does that happen to us, right? We get so passionate about something, we get drawn into something, we're chasing something, and it really, if you think about it in the scope of eternity and what really matters and what really lasts, it doesn't really matter. But we get so wrapped up in it, and it really, it's not consequential when it comes to eternity. But you know what is? What's the one thing that really matters when there's chaos in life, is crazy, and you need that thing to kind of bring you back to center? Like, what did Jesus say matters more than anything? Loving God, all right? So it's this connection. And I'll go back to this when I'm thinking, man, this is a crazy season of life. You know, okay, what matters? My relationship with God, love God, and then loving people. That's what Jesus said is most important. It's that relationship and that connection with God. It's that connection with others. It's people, loving people, serving people, connecting other people with their Creator, with God. That's what's going to matter forever. That's the only lasting things in this life. Anything else that you can succeed in, build, accumulate, those things are temporary. They're not going to last. So why give your life to becoming all passionate about those things when they're not lasting? Now, if you can find a way to redeem other things in your life so that it is about God and about other people, then great. But those are the only things that are going to last. At the end of your life, those are the only things that are not going to surround like regret if you gave your life to that, pursuing God and his love for other people. And so Nineveh was filled with people, 120,000 people that needed the message that Jonah had. You and I are surrounded by people that need the message that we have. They need God in their life. And there's a lot of things you could be passionate about. But don't get passionate about something that doesn't last. Nineveh was a great city that wasn't so great on the inside. And we live in a great part of the country. I love living here. But there's a lot of people where we live, by the tens of thousands around us, that on the inside it's empty, and there's brokenness, and they're spiritually lost. And God, when he looks at our great city, he sees people that are without him. And I just want to ask the question, does your heart break like God's heart breaks for the people that are around us? One more time, I want to go back to this story in Jonah chapter 4. Jonah chapter 4, verse 5. Jonah had gone out and he sat down at the place east of the city, and there he made himself a shelter. He sat in its shade and he waited to see what would happen to the city. Verse 6, then the Lord God provided a leafy plant and made it grow up over Jonah to give shade for his head to ease his discomfort. And Jonah was very happy about the plant. We get pretty happy about our comfort, don't we? We get pretty happy when things are going how we want them to go. But at dawn the next day, God provided a worm which chewed the plant so that it withered. And when the sun rose, God provided a scorching east wind, and the sun blazed on Jonah's head so that he grew faint. He's out in the hot sun. It's burning on him. He's sitting there, and it says he wanted to die, and he said, it would be better for me to die than to live. He's upset about how things are going in Nineveh. God's not destroying it. They're turning to God. You might be thinking about the potential and how this is going to impact him and his people. He's out in the hot sun. He's burning, blazing up, and he's upset on the inside. He's hot, maybe hotter on the inside than he is on the outside, but he's just not happy. He's like, I'm ready to die. So angry, I wish I were dead. Verse 10, but the Lord said to Jonah, he said, you have been concerned about this plant that brought him shade and comfort. Though you did not tend it and make it grow, it sprang up overnight and it died overnight. And should I not have concern for the great city of Nineveh, in which there are more than 120,000 people who cannot tell their right hand from their left, and also many animals? And Jonah, you're more concerned about your physical comfort, about this plant, than you are about the spiritual comfort, the spiritual status of these people in this city. And he connects the two in this same paragraph. He says, Jonah, you're so worried about the things that don't really matter. You didn't do anything to cause that plant to grow, to tend it, to care for it. This was a blessing from me, and the blessings of this world, God created them. The things that you might be chasing without realizing you're chasing them, the things of this life, those are creations of God. You say, well, I worked for it, but who gave you the ability to work? Who gave you life? Who chose where you were born? Who allowed you to have breath in your lungs and that you're still alive and here? Who allowed you to wake up this morning? Who gave you hands to work and a mind to think? Who is that from? Is that from you? No, it's not from you. That's from God. And all the blessings that are around us, all the beauty of this world, anything good in this world, where does it come from? Who's the creator? He is. So don't start worshiping those things like they're something that they're not. You know, in Romans it says that people exchange the worship of the creator for worship of the creation. If you're not careful, you'll do that. And Jonah, he's so happy about this shade. He's so happy about his physical comfort. It goes away, and he's all upset about it, and he's all twisted inside. He's angered. He's like, God, I wish I was dead because things in my life are not going how I want them to, and I'm not comfortable. Sound familiar? You know, maybe sometimes we're going through it. It's because we're upset about the wrong things. God, I'm just not happy that I'm not comfortable, and I'm not happy because things in my life are not going how I want them to. You kind of see a little bit how selfish that is, right? And Jonah is all upset because it's not going how he wants it to, and he's not comfortable. And God gives him an attitude check. He says, Jonah, there's 120,000 people perishing in this city. What's more important? Your comfort and what you want, or these people's eternities, their lives? No comparison. Game over. And man, you and I, we can so easily forget that God has a mission for us, that he has a purpose for us, and our comfort is not the mission. Your comfort is not God's mission. Now, when you can be comfortable and blessed, and then great. In fact, I mean, that's what paradise is going to be in heaven. He says there's no more pain, there's no sorrow, there's no tears. So God's taking you to that place. That's going to be there too. But that's not even what's most important in heaven. It's God's presence. That's what makes heaven heaven. If there was all this comfort and God wasn't there, it would be hell. Because, see, without God, life is a living hell. Even if it looks great on the outside, like Nineveh you must have stood on the outside of that wall thinking, man, that's a great city. But inside it was empty. So what really matters? Is it our comfort? It's not. It's not. That's not what matters most. Now, how many of you, if you think about this, you like to be comfortable, like in a pool? Here in Florida, we have a lot of pools around. In fact, here, help me out here for a second. Let me see this. I love floating in a pool. I love swimming in a pool. Thank you so much. Thank you very much. And if you're in a pool and you got some inflatable stuff that you can float on, you can relax on. You can really relax in a pool, right? I mean, you can have some fun. I like hanging out in pools when other people are on the inflatables, especially my children, because I love to go dump them. It's like, I know it's wrong, but that's like a hobby. It's like fun. I see someone relax, and I come and tip them over. So you don't want to get in a pool with me. You can imagine how comfortable you would be, though, if you were in a nice pool. It's a hot day out. Maybe you got, a cold drink in your hand, maybe a book, and you're floating there in the water. You're relaxing. Maybe out in the Gulf, and you're just floating along. And let's say you're out in the Gulf, and you're enjoying the day, and it's beautiful, and maybe sunset's approaching, and you just relax, and you're sitting there on your inflatable tube, and man, you just having a good time, laid back, right? You're living the dream, right? But then you see somebody who's like about 30, 40 yards down the beach, and they're flailing their arms, and they're sinking. And you're thinking, oh my goodness, I think that person's drowning. Now, what you're probably not going to do, if you have any character at all, is you're probably not going to be like, well, I hope there's a lifeguard on duty. And you're going to take another drink and, sit back. And what's that sunset? I got to float over here, so I don't want any of those waves to kind of upset the thing I got going on over here. You just can you stop flapping your arms like that, man? Come on. You're disrupting me. Quiet down. I mean, you're not going to do that, right? I mean, that's crazy. No, you wouldn't do that. You would climb out of this inner tube, and you would throw it at them, right? And you would say, hey, take this. You would help them. Why? Because they're perishing. They're dying, right? I don't think that we live for comfort to the neglect of God's mission because we don't care. I think in general we care. If we could see things the way they are, I think that we would care. But sometimes we get our vision off. We get our focus off, and we start focusing on things like other names that matter to us that shouldn't matter. We start to focus on other things in life other than Jesus, and we get so zeroed in and so focused on those things, and we're living for those things, or we're living for those people, or we're living for that, whatever it is, and we're chasing that, and there's people all around us perishing, spiritually perishing, forever in eternity perishing, and we're giving our lives to things like making ourselves comfortable. And God's like, I got something better for you than that. I have a mission for you. Come fish for men. Come live your life so that other lives can connect with their Creator. I mean, that's what's going to matter when you get to the end of your life. I'm just telling you, if just one or two people got this today really deeply, this will be worth all. Like if you would just understand that if you could give your life, all of you pour it into in whatever career, in whatever way that God has it, in whatever path He has for you, if you could just pour everything into saying, God, I want to be about your work, your mission, seeing people come to know you and follow you and live for you. I'm telling you, at the end of your life, you will be so grateful. You'll replay this conversation. Like, man, I'm so glad God set me up for that, and that I was there and I heard that and I made the change, because I was living for comfort. And as I've watched people that get to the end of their life, and it eventually, just so you know, this life eventually becomes uncomfortable. And maybe if you live a really good life at the end of your life, in old age, and I don't know what will take you out, if it will be cancer or a car accident or some other thing, but there'll be an ending point where it'll get uncomfortable, and this whole world will be a little bit, if you've been living for comfort, a disillusionment. Because you'll realize that all you're trying to grab and hold on to is dissipating in your hands. And I'm just saying, live for something that actually lasts. Because you don't want to get to the end of your life and look at what you've been holding on to and realize that it's nothing. Hold on to something. Hold on to someone that's going to be eternal. Hold on to Jesus. Live for him. Live for a mission that matters. And I'm just telling you, that's what's important. You know, I want to wrap up this whole teaching series with one more verse from Isaiah chapter 43. It's one that Jennifer came across and shared with me a few weeks ago, and I wanted to share it with you here at the end of this teaching series. Isaiah chapter 43, whatever it is that you're going through and you're wondering, am I going to make it? Am I going to get through? How am I living this life? Am I doing things that matter? I want to encourage you, although it's not easy to follow Jesus in a secular world that we live in, Isaiah 43:2 gives hope. It says, when you pass through the waters, I will be with you. And when you pass through the rivers, they will not sweep over you. When you walk through the fire, you will not be burned, and the flames will not set you ablaze. Listen, whatever it is that you're going through, you have someone going through it with you. And here's the final lesson in your notes. I'd love for you to write this down. God is patient, and God is present among us. God is patient. And he's going to work with you through your failures and your mistakes, the areas where you get caught up and but he's patient, he's loving, he's kind. But make no mistake about it, he's not going to give up on you. And he's going to relentlessly chase you down until you following him with all your heart. And listen, not only is he patient, but he's present. He's with us. He's with us now, and he's with you throughout this week. So live for him. Live for what matters, and you will live a life that you will be forever grateful you lived. Right on?
Thanks again for joining us today at Church Experience Online. Please don't forget to check out the website if you'd like to get more connected, learn more, get your questions answered, or support the movement financially. You're now going to hear a Church Experience Worship original song. We hope this gives you an opportunity to worship and reflect on what you learned today.
You offer life to the furthest.